Hey everybody, so for the first time since late 2017, the MidTower Deluxe is currently being air cooled. So had a little issue this morning with the water cooling system. The pump has sprung a leak on the discharge outlet right where it meets up with the fitting. It cracked, which was causing coolant to seep out. It wasn't a very bad leak, but when I went to try to fix the leak, I just thought maybe the Teflon tape on the threads might have failed, so I just took it apart and went to tighten it back down with new tape, and coolant kind of went everywhere. This is before I had the system plugged back in, so luckily nothing got damaged. But that's why the pump and reservoir are currently missing from the loop right now. So I've got the radiator still up there, and I got the CPU block tied off to the side right there. Currently got a heatsink fan out of an OEM system, probably out of an HP, currently cooling it right now, which is doing fine. Which brings me to question A, should I replace the pump with a brand new pump and retain the liquid cooling system on this thing, or B, should I just gut the water cooling system off of here and go back to air cooling? Let me go and explain why I'm kind of on the fence between that. So the reason why I would want to fix the water cooling system is because, well, it gives this thing extra cooling capacity. That way, if I want to push this thing hard, that way if I want to overclock it, I have extra cooling capacity available, because that big radiator can definitely dissipate a lot of heat, and also makes this thing run a little quieter because you don't have a fan screaming away inside the system whenever you're pushing this thing hard. In fact, during the winter time, when it's gets down to the 60s in here, the fans on that radiator will actually shut off, which is, I mean, pretty cool. It's makes this thing run very quiet. So another pro, if I didn't mention already, is the fact that the water cooling system just looks cool on this thing. It looks like, of course, it is a kind of a homebrew water cooling system, but it has worked well for many years. It definitely makes this thing stand out. It doesn't look like your average computer. And sometimes when I have visitors over, they'll remark on this computer the way it looks with the water cooling system and everything. So there's definitely that cool factor. But there's that big but. The big but is, with the water cooling system, you always run the risk of there being a leak. And it's the reason why I have the reservoir and the pump up top. That way, if there's a small leak, it lowers the chances of coolant getting on the hardware. Whereas if it's inside here, coolant can leak onto things, which in a way still can kind of happen if coolant does happen to track over to where these holes are in the case for the tubes to pass through. I mean, that can still happen, but having the stuff on top definitely does help a little bit in that regard, because I was able to quickly shut this thing down and get paper towels up here to stop the coolant from going everywhere. Although when I put things back together and started putting coolant back in it, before I even fired this thing up, coolant was leaking everywhere. And of course, I'll show you in this clip of what actually happened. So there's always that inherent risk of either A, there being a leak, or B, the pump failing, which would cause your system to overheat. And as you can see, when there's a failure like that, you kind of have to do what I'm doing right now. Another concern is the coolant that's in this system. So the coolant that's in the system is basically what's in your car. It's ethylene glycol. It's literally a 75% to 25% mixture of distilled water to Prestone antifreeze. So basically what I did is I took 50-50 mix of Prestone green antifreeze coolant, and I mixed it half and half with distilled water to kind of dilute it down a little bit. But the thing is, you know, it's toxic. And now currently I don't have any cats or dogs. I do have a little parakeet and a ball python snake actually, but I don't have any dogs or cats running loose in the house. And the thing is, should I want to get a cat or a dog, that would be a huge concern in having this, like it is if it were to spring a leak and a cat or dog was to drink it. That would not be good. Now of course there are alternatives to what I'm running in this, but the antifreeze coolant mixture has proved reliable. I mean, I want to say that's probably why my pump has lasted as long as it's lasted. I think I guess the lubrication properties of the antifreeze coolant has probably extended the life of that pump. I mean, again, it's a cheap end pump and it's lasted all this time. Like I said, I got this thing set up and ready to accept a new pump, but I could just gut the rest of the water cooling stuff out of this and just leave it like it is with the air cooling. Now, if I do that, I might actually put a different heatsink fan in here. Now, that one that's in there is doing fine. I mean, this is a Ryzen 7 1700X. It's not a very hot running CPU. It's a 95 watt TDP. The reason why I did the water cooling system to begin with was back in 2010, I upgraded this thing to the AMD Phenom 2 quad-core 965 Black Edition CPU, which ran hot. It was a 125 watt CPU. It ran hot. And then later the AMD FX 8120 CPU, which I had overclocked to 4.2 gigahertz. It was definitely a heat machine. This computer was like a space heater. Therefore, it needed the water cooling system to effectively disperse that heat out of the system and do so without sounding like a leaf blower or a vacuum cleaner. Now, with the Ryzen 7 1700X, like the Ryzen 5 5600G in my system at work, they're both cooler running CPUs. I mean, this one's a 95 watt TDP, as I mentioned. The Ryzen 5 5600G is a 65 watt TDP APU. Therefore, you don't necessarily need to have the water cooling there. And the thing is, when you have the water cooling, at least the setup I have, anytime I work on this thing, I have to leave this thing vertically like it is, which makes it kind of a pain to do some repairs. Used to be back when it was just air cooled, I could turn the system on its side, not to worry about cooling spilling out of anything. Whereas of course now, have to keep it upright. And also that radiator and all the water cooling stuff just adds a lot of weight to this thing. This computer is heavy. I mean, you have 4 hard drives in there, full size motherboard, got the power supply there, 2 optical drives. You know, they don't have a whole bunch of graphics cards like a lot of newer computers have, but still, all this together with that radiator makes this thing dang heavy. So I'm on the fence. I'm on the fence between just replacing the pump, which would cost me only like $25 roughly. I mean, it was the SC600 pump. I mean, that thing lasted all this time, and it wasn't the pump itself that failed. It was a crack in the housing due to at the time having to use plumber's tape, or this Teflon tape, because the fitting I had would bottom out before meshing down the O-ring. But I do happen to have newer compression fittings now that they're better, but still they're not the best. So like I say, I'm on the fence. What do you think? Should we keep the water cooling system, or should we keep it simple and just go back to air cooling? Let me know what you think in the comments. Now let's go have a look at the pump to show you what happened. Okay, so here's the pump assembly in the reservoir. Many years ago, this reservoir sprung a leak, had a crack in it, which I was successfully able to seal up with a crap ton of super glue, and that has held just fine. So that's another thing to have to consider, is this reservoir has been repaired to stop a leak. That was back when I had redone this water cooling system many years ago, back in early 2018. So here's the pump, and here's the fitting. You see what I was talking about. This fitting, the threads are so long they bottom out in this discharge line. It bottoms out before the O-ring crushes down and seals that way. So I had to use Teflon tape to seal the threads, and I mean, it worked for many years. And you just had to do the same here on this one, where the reservoir feeds the pump. That was not leaking, but turn this thing around, you can see this massive crack. And I'm pretty sure this had a crack earlier. I'm pretty sure that's why it was leaking. And when I went to tighten this down, it just expanded that crack and made a huge mess. So I guess that's what you get with these cheap end pumps. You get plastic, which can crack, but I will say I would still highly suggest you pick up one of these pumps. And probably what I'll do is, if I decide to buy another pump, I'll look on Amazon for some better fittings that won't, hopefully will not bottom out inside this fitting. But then again, there's not a lot of threads there to thread into, and the issue I had was these new fittings I have. Here's my other one. You can see there's not a lot there. Like when you're threading this into plastic, there's not a lot there for it to thread into, and you'll easily strip out the threads. Now in the case of installing this on a metal, let's say a water block that's metal, it's no problem. I mean, you got copper or whatever it's in that block, and I mean it'll work fine in that regard. But for plastic, yeah, I'm just on the fence about that. Don't really like the idea of it. So that's what brought this pump to its knees. I mean, this thing still works. It's just you can't use it because, well, it's got a big old crack in the discharge line. Now, I'll definitely be looking forward to a tear down this pump, because I will be tearing it down to show the insides of it, because I'm sure some of you out there are probably curious how this sub $30 Chinese water pump has held up over the 6 years of service. I mean, this thing's been running non-stop for 6 years. Pretty dang impressive for something that was like $23 or $25. So anyways, again, feel free to let me know what you think in the comments. Like I said, I'm going to probably make a decision here in a couple of days or so. I may stick with air cooling, because the current system, as it is right now, really does not need water cooling, because I'm running it at stock clocks. I'm not overclocking it. Now, in the future, when I upgrade this system, whenever I upgrade it to, if I decide to go with a high performance, high end CPU, I very well could put the water cooling system back on it. I'm saving all the stuff to do it that way. Should I want to go back to water cooling, I can. So I'm not throwing away this reservoir or the radiator and fans. I'm keeping all that stuff. So anyways, what do you think? Hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Hey everybody. Thanks for watching this video from Q channel. If this is your first time, please subscribe to the channel and tick the bell so you get notified of a new video I post. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, leave a comment, and share this video as well as the channel with your friends to get the word out. In addition, I have a second YouTube channel, that's CubeCompMTDX. Again, I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you so much for your support.